Hey, what's up, everybody? Ron Harris here. Thanks for joining me on my channel, Ron Harris Muscle. As I said in my last video, I was the associate producer for a company called American Sports Network. We produce programming, bodybuilding programming, specifically for ESPN and ESPN2. I was there throughout the 90s, and I just came upon another segment from the show that aired in late 1993. So I haven't seen this in over 30 years. It's a recap of the 1993 Mr. Olympia contest in Atlanta, Georgia, which we produced the 1 hour special for that aired on ESPN. But then we also took clips of it and made a 7.5 minute segment for the monthly American Muscle Show. And that's what I want to show you today. It's going to go over the top 10. So just to give you an idea, there were 22 men in the show that year. Of course, it was Dorian Yates' second victory. A couple of guys who did not make top 10, so they're not in this, are Milo Sarshev, the late Ray McNeil, who would tragically be murdered just a few months later on Valentine's Day by his wife, Sally McNeil, and the late Mike Matarazzo from my native Boston. But let's get into it, guys. I want to show you this this coverage because, like I said, some of you don't even realize bodybuilding was on mainstream TV back in the day. It really was, I promise you. So let's go full screen and go for it. Here we go.
Now that the 8-year reign of Lee Haney is but a chapter in bodybuilding history, the path is clear for the next generation of bodybuilders to redefine the limits of the sport. The event took place in Lee Haney's hometown of Atlanta, Georgia, and drew over 5,000 muscle fans who paid up to $250 a seat to witness the contest.
Just have to stop right there for a second because it's funny. $250. This is 31 years ago. Of course, this was only the Mr. Olympia. There were no other divisions. This was, you went and bought tickets just to watch the Mr. Olympia, one division. Now the tickets, the VIP tickets, can run as much as $1,000 a seat, I believe. But you're seeing 11 different divisions. This was a one-day contest, guys. Saturday morning judging, Saturday evening finals. Boop, you were done. So it was a much, much simpler time. Here we go.
The lineup was...
This was the greatest pose down in all of bodybuilding history. We had Italy's Flavio Boccianini, who was 4'10", maybe 4'11" on a good day, about 120, 130 pounds. Lou Ferrigno. Lou here was 6'5". This is probably the biggest he ever was on stage. I believe he said he was 315 pounds, and I don't doubt him. We'll get to him in a second. He placed 10th. But they posed down, and it was just hilarious. It was truly David versus Goliath. Lou had come back the previous year at the Helsinki Olympia, where Dorian had his first victory after 17 years away from competition. This was a much bigger, fuller Lou Ferrigno than we had seen in Helsinki.
Packed with more big men than ever before, with more than 10 men weighing over 240 pounds. With the presence...
You hear that? It was a big deal that guys were over 240. There was more than 10 men in the show that weighed over 240 pounds. 31 years ago, that was a big deal. That was huge. A guy on stage over 240. Wow, that's, you know, we have so many big guys now that we had to create a 212 division for the lighter guys, because most guys are in the open division over 240 pounds these days, even if they're only like 5'6" or 5'7".
Of Olympia veterans Lee Labrada, Shawn Ray, Dorian Yates, and many more exciting first-timers like Flex Wheeler and Paul Dillette. Pre-judging was an insane struggle for the IFBB judges to place the competitors accurately. In 10th place was Lou Ferrigno, by far the crowd's favorite competitor. Each time he stepped center stage for comparisons, the crowd went wild with appreciation, and his night show posing routine had the Civic Center shaking with applause and cheers of Lou. Ferrigno made good on his promise of going out at his best, weighing a shocking 316 pounds. He will now return to acting in motion pictures.
I toured the world and gave a lot of exhibition. And every time I gave each exhibition, I would get a 5-minute standing ovation before I posed. It really tells me that the fact that I'm like the last legend making a comeback from the 70s, and to motivate me to compete today.
So that was supposed to be Lou's final Mr. Olympia. It was his second show after coming back, being away 17 years, doing The Incredible Hulk and a bunch of other film projects. But as historians will know, Joe Weider did create the Masters Olympia contest shortly after this, which debuted in 1994. Lou came back and he was supposed to win that. He was a heavy favorite to win that. He was 44 years old. But I think Robbie Robinson won the first one. He tried it one more time. I don't know, Vince Taylor or Don Youngblood. Somebody else beat him. He never did quite get that Olympia title, but at least he got to compete a few more times. And I'm glad I got to see him. This is the only time I ever personally saw him compete. I wasn't at either of those Masters Olympias, and I had not been in Finland for the 92 show. Here we're going to get to the late Andreas Muller, who would only live three more years beyond this.
Andreas Muller pulled off his second top 10 Mr. Olympia placing in his 3-year pro career. Though he was still sliced and diced, many agreed that had he duplicated his condition from the night of the champions, a top 5 placing would have been guaranteed.
Yeah, he didn't speak much English, but what a nice guy. He had competed. The first time I met him was at the Pro Ironman the year before. He had come out to do that in Los Angeles, and I was kind of a gopher. I was doing a lot of driving around stuff, even though I was producing and stuff. I'm sorry, no, 91 was the first year I saw him, I believe. Anyway, the two guys that had to drive that day around from back and forth from the hotel to the gym we were shooting at were Muller and the late Momo Benaziza. Ironically, they both passed away. Benaziza actually passed away that year, so that was 92. Yeah.
Sonny Schmid finally beat his personal demon that had kept him off top condition on several occasions, yet dropped another place from last year's Olympia. This is proof of how tough this competition gets each successive year.
Yeah, Sonny, God rest his soul, he didn't live a whole lot longer after that either. I want to say he passed. I'm just trying to remember this. I think he passed around 2002, 2003. I might be incorrect. It was he did get cancer and pass away. A lot of people get cancer. It's very unfortunate. He was a very soft-spoken guy, super strong, big, dense, thick muscle, rugged physique on that guy.
Great Britain's Charles Claremont rolled into 7th, packing 235 pounds on his 6-foot frame. The 4-time NABA Pro Universe champion had many in the audience wondering where this awesome physique had been hiding all these years. He then went on to win 4 European Grand Prix events.
Claremont, that's one of the most underrated physiques of the 90s by far. A lot of you guys who are newer to the sport, or even if you've been following it, I bet for as long as 10, 15 years, I bet many of you have never even heard of Charles Claremont. That's a shame. As you saw, his physique was spectacular. Beautiful shape, symmetry, proportion. I believe he had been an Army Special Forces guy in Britain. I know he was some kind of Armed Forces veteran over there, but cool guy. I know Giles has interviewed him a couple times.
Big Paul Dillette was almost 270 pounds, his biggest ever, and almost 20 pounds over his North American weight. Jurassic Paul was a big hit with the fans, but he just doesn't seem to have the deep separation and muscle hardness needed to impress the polished international judges.
I really haven't set any really standard as far as size go, because you have guys like Lee Ferrigno and Dorian Yates also, who are big men in their rights. I think the difference in myself and Lou Ferrigno and Dorian Yates would be, I am still such a large man, but at the same time, I still have the waistline of a middleweight and the small bone structure, so it makes it look more unique.
Just a note on that, Paul Dillette, he retired long ago, and you can see he does have a very small bone structure. He looks nothing like that now. He looks not, when I say half the size, he's more like 1/3 the size that he was in his prime. So that was a guy who was a tremendous responder to training, to food, probably to PEDs, of course. But he was just massive. He never had much of a back to him, unfortunately. Had his back been as good as his front, and had he been a better poser, his posing was incredibly awkward. I think he would have gone much, much further than he did. So he was still a freaky guy. They called him Freakenstein. I don't know if I came up with that one. I might have. The nickname.
A little bit of subcutaneous water was all it took to knock Kevin Levrone down 3 places from last year into 5th. Even a winter pec tear had no effect on his huge upper body as previously feared. He just didn't hit his peak perfectly.
When it comes to this show, I'm more relaxed than I've ever probably been in, for any other contest. So there's really no pressure right there. I placed second And the only thing that I want to do is go in this contest better than I was last year. And everything's looking good, so.
Yeah, we sort of downplayed exactly what happened to him. Kevin was bench pressing 500 pounds, maybe it was 600, it was at least 500. Completely tore the pec off. This was earlier the same year. He had surgery, couldn't train his upper body for months and months. I've interviewed him about this so many times. I should know the exact timeline, but he barely had enough time to even put the muscle back on in time for this show. So the fact that he was coming back from a pec tear, this show was probably in September, October. I think he had torn the pec in in February of the same year. So that is insane how quick he bounced back from that, how quick he was able to come back from an injury that had ended many careers prior to Kevin and even after Kevin. So that was the famous pec tear. And I think at the time we didn't realize how significant it was, but looking back, we do.
For the 7th year in a row, Lee Labrada made the top 4 in the Mr. Olympia. Although his professionalism is unquestioned and he has added some mass, the pro ranks are becoming proliferated with a new breed of men with equally great symmetry, but with enormous size. At 5'4", it's tough for Lee to match. Shawn Ray.
Yeah, Lee Labrada was a legend. He was an amazing poser, one of the best posers of all time. Beautiful physique, just perfect shape, symmetry, proportion, condition, everything. He was just hitting an era of mass monsters. Dorian ushered in this era of mass monsters. We started seeing guys like Deet, Dorian, Nasser, Jean-Pierre Fuchs, these massive guys, Mike Francois, who are anywhere from 250 to 280 pounds or more on stage. And there was no 212 division back then. Lee, to his credit, had taken second place at the Olympia on more than one occasion prior to this to Lee Haney. But times were changing, and the judges were really sort of starting to prioritize mass. But let's go to Shawn. Shawn Ray was a very consistent Mr. Olympia competitor for many years.
He hit his peak and had almost everybody thinking he was a surefire second place, but was held in third by the more critical judges. Flex Wheeler made his Olympia debut and beat all but one man. He appeared slightly off his Arnold Classic condition, but still had enough going for him in the areas of size and shape to overwhelm most of the Olympia veterans. Most agreed that he will win the Olympia within the next several years, frustrating veterans that find the ultimate professional crown perpetually elusive.
I always thought that I possibly could do well if I ever just got a handle on what it takes for me to get in condition and so on, but it's gave me a tremendous I guess light at the end of the tunnel because I've done so well already, and I guess that's where the expectations come from as far as expect me to continue doing that well. But I'm in this for a business, and as far as I can say, business is just going well right now. So.
Yeah, so as we know now, looking at this 31 years later, Flex never did win an Olympia. He was second place 3 different occasions, I believe. He won the Arnold Classic 5 times, but the Olympia title it eluded him. He never got it. You ask a lot of people who the best physique of all time was. A lot of people will say Flex Wheeler, though he never won a Mr. Olympia. So just goes to show you, the Olympia is amazing. It's a crown jewel. It's what all these guys aspire to. It's the ultimate title in the sport. But sometimes you can have an amazing career and be a legend without it. He did it. Levrone did it. Shawn Ray did it. Tom Platz. There's been a few guys, Rich Kaspari, who are legendary and made tremendous careers in the sport and far, far beyond once their competitive years were over. But Flex, this was the year this was his rookie year, guys. He was second place at the Olympia on his first attempt. Earlier that season, he had won the Pro Ironman. A couple weeks later, he won the Arnold Classic for the first time with the best condition we've ever seen him in. One of the greatest physiques of all time. He was only about 216 pounds there. And he would win, I think, 4 or 5 more Grand Prix shows this year. So it was a crazy good, an amazingly successful rookie year. I don't think anyone's ever had that much success in a rookie year as Flex. So second place at the Olympia, wow, for a guy who just turned pro the summer before.
On this particular day, nobody came close to the total package displayed by Britain's Dorian Yates. He weighed in at 257 pounds, a full 15 pounds heavier than his first win last year in Helsinki. It should be noted that he was still the hardest man in the show, despite his enormous size.
Just as a side note, this was the show where 6 weeks prior, the famous black and white shots by Kevin Horton with the black socks were taken in his gym, in Temple Gym. Those shots are iconic. And he said many times in many interviews that I did with him, even because we had an MD column with Dorian for years that I wrote with him. You know, I would call him up and he would talk to me and I would write everything down. It's not like he'd actually gained those 15 pounds or whatever it was from 92 to 93. He had sort of over dieted for his first win, 1992 in Helsinki. And for this show, he allowed himself to eat a little bit more and come in a little bigger and fuller, still had crazy condition. Condition 92 was probably the greatest condition, but he was flattered. This was probably in the minds of many the best Dorian we ever saw in 93, because he had that combination of the size and the condition. He hadn't torn his bicep yet, so here he was probably at his absolute prime.
You know, I made tremendous improvements this year. I'm probably 15 or 16 pounds heavier than last year, and also more dense and harder and everything like that. So it's going to be a big problem for the guys.
This is the biggest bodybuilding contest in the world, and each year the physiques stray further and further from accepted beliefs about how much better the human body could possibly become.
Just as a side note about that, you know, that was the epitome of physiques up at that time, up until that point. And of course, now if we look at the Olympia lineup, is in terms of the levels of mass, just sheer mass, we've seen it's gone up many levels since then. It's evolved. You can debate all day long whether the 90s guys look better or the today's guys look better, but there's no arguing that the mass has gone up. I mean, Dorian at 256 pounds or 257, whatever he was there, that was like one of the biggest, freakiest human beings we had ever seen. Dillette, 268. I mean, we've seen Rami now at about 300 pounds. We've seen Samson at 300 pounds. It's not uncommon now. We have guys that big all the time. And, you know, like I said, so many huge guys that we had to create a division for guys who were under 230. Well, it's 212 is the limit, but, you know, it's basically for guys who are never going to be able to match the 250 to 300 pounders in terms of standing next to them on size. So that's it. That's been a review. That was the American Muscle coverage of the 1993 Olympia, the highlights taken from the 1 hour show that we had produced for ESPN. Hope you enjoyed it. Brought back a lot of memories for me. I'm very, very grateful and blessed that I was able to be in those places right up front, part of the actual TV production, doing those interviews backstage with the guys and everything. They were really good times, and very happy to still be here and doing it in another format, another platform right here on your phone or your computer. So guys, thanks for watching. If you like what you see, please subscribe, like, and share. Do all that. Helps me out. It doesn't cost you anything. Really trying to grow this channel so I can proceed and come up with better and better content for you guys as time goes by. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one.